If you help me, I will take care of you. You're now under my control. Go to 47 West 13th Street. If the scientist doesn't comply, you must kill her.
I keep fighting because of what I can continually prove to myself about myself. And I need things like that in my life to make me continue striving for something.
How do I explain this to people? MMA meets 15th century armor and beating the living snot out of your friend with steel weapons.
Horror, anguish, and terror.
I fear that the only way to stop those possessed by the spirits of the book is through the act of bodily dismemberment.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Friday, the 29th of October, 2021. And a few things that I'd like to talk about, since this is a white wall with some, I don't know, random things. You might be able to see it depending on what size monitor or television you're watching this on at home. But clearly, this is not what I normally have when I do fun table sessions. It's actually usually on the other side of this table. You can see my CD collection and some other stuff on the wall. But as some people know and some people don't, I am in the process of moving. And so the very next live stream that I do will be from the new residence. And so things might look a little different over there. But it's really exciting for me to think back that when I started down this virtual road on May 22nd, 2020, that this is where I was sitting for that very first one. And here I am 255 live streams later, sitting in the very same chair. The first live stream, I had 4 wonderful, talented guests from the Alice world of friends of theirs that have dance and acting and fire breathing and all kinds of other kind of backgrounds. And then here we are today, where I have 2 wonderful, talented, multi-talented guests that I'm going to be talking with our fun table session. If you're new to this concept, this is where I invite guests back that I've interviewed prior, and we just hang out and shoot the breeze for an hour and a half, 2 hours about just anything under the sun. So if you're having to be joining us and you want to put something into the chat for a specific guest or just for us in general, or comments that you have about what's going on in your part of the world, please do so. Otherwise, we just kind of go off on all kinds of different tangents, and that's kind of how this is designed. I can say, having said that I'm moving and everything else, that I do actually know when my next live stream is. I just posted about it yesterday on my Instagram, and that's where I post everything first. So if you're not following me as Eclectic Arts Media over there, that's where you want to hit that follow button or find me over there. You'll see a picture of myself next to Jeff Bridges, that same avatar that I use across all my platforms. And so on, let me make sure I get the date right, Monday, November 8th. One of my all-time favorite shows right now, TV shows, is called Yellowstone. It's cable's #1 drama. It features Kevin Costner, and it's kind of The Godfather meets cowboy in Montana. That's kind of a real basic theme of it. And they've had 3 seasons of the show. Well, the 4th season was delayed. It was supposed to debut sometime around June, and they pushed it back to November 7th. So on Sunday, November 7th, season 4 comes back, and I'm super excited to see that. And so on the very next night, November 8th, Monday, and I want to say it's at 6 p.m. Pacific time, Mo Brings Plenty, who plays the character of Mo, is just an amazing man. I had the pleasure of interviewing him back around early April, and he's going to come back. So now that I think they're going to be showing 2 episodes on that Sunday, we can finally talk about this new season. And if you haven't watched the show, it ended on a cliffhanger for season 3. So like everyone's kind of wanting to know what's going to happen. So we're going to find out what's going to happen, and Mo's going to be here so we can talk with him about everything about those episodes and what he's been up to, because he's been working on some other things as well. And then also another guest that's returning, And this has been over a year. God, it's hard to believe, but we connected back in October of last year. So on the 14th of November, which is Sunday, I forget the time. I got to double check. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'll post the correct time. But Beatriz Mariano from Portugal will be joining me. Just amazing photographer, artist, musician. If you like things in the dark slanted things of the world, I know she's got a degree in fine arts. She is truly an artist in every sense of the word, and I love talking with her. Our interview last time went over 2 hours, just one-on-one, and so she's agreed to come back and catch us up with everything she's been doing. So those are two things that I'm really, really excited about, and they're confirmed. They're ready to go. And so as long as my internet connection works over at my new place, then they will happen. And I'm sure there'll be some other live stream announcements as well. But obviously, I've been trying to focus on the move first. But these two things I could not say no to whatsoever. And I'm so happy that they're going to be happening in November. So without wasting any more time, let's get to this new fun table session, the October edition. Last year, we were dressed up in certain types of costumes to a certain degree. I remember I didn't even have the ability to do video intros. I remember I was trying to play some spooky music off of I think my laptop or something to the side, and all these kind of strange things. So it's, even that in a sense is like interesting to see how these have progressed in just a year's time. My first guest to bring in, let's see, I'm looking at my list here. Let's bring in, I had the pleasure of interviewing this guest about a film that he directed called Steel Song. We saw a real small snippet of it during this video montage that was first played a few minutes ago. And he also has a professional ballet background and many other things that has a love of doing, it sounds like. And so let's welcome Adrian Cicerone to this new fun table. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, let me make sure I press the right button and make sure I unmute him. Oh, did I do that? There we go. Yeah. Hi, Adrian.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Apparently, I'm really tired. I can't even hit the right button.
It's been a long week.
I'm doing really well, though. How are you?
I'm okay. Looking forward to Halloween, that's for sure.
Yes. It's going to be great then. And it falls on a Sunday, and at least up here, the weather's supposed to be actually perfect for it. We're going to be dry, and it's supposed to be kind of foggy in the mornings. I don't know if that means fog's going to roll in at night, but it's like, ooh, man, that gets me excited for Halloween.
Awesome. Yeah, me too.
Cool. So let's bring in our other guest, and she also joined me. Actually, I think if I remember right, it's around the same time, maybe the same 7-day, 10-day span. I've done her interview real close to when I did Adrian's. And she is the current star of Implanted, which is also available on digital platforms right now. So you can watch that this weekend or maybe on Halloween if you choose to do so. And I completely butchered her name last time. So let's see if I get it right this time. Please welcome Michelle Girolami.
That was perfect.
Yes.
You nailed it.
Yes. I felt so bad that first time. Oh my gosh,
no
I butchered it.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, well, I guess I redeemed myself then.
Oh, you killed it.
How are you, Michelle?
I'm great. Yeah, also excited about Halloween.
Very cool. Now for both of you, have you always been into Halloween, like when you're younger, or is it something you developed later, or what's your level of love of Halloween?
Michelle,
I have a love of any festivities of any kind, any celebration I'm in. And Halloween, yeah, I've always loved it. I mean, I do also like really love costumes, of course, as an actor. And I love horror movies and all things candy, all things Halloween.
I just noticed the orange and black attire, which is awesome, by the way. I literally somehow it just clicked. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, really cool. But I have to agree with her too. I've always loved dressing up, like ballet, I guess. So, but I've always loved dressing up. I was always like that weirdo, eccentric kid who would show up like dressed as like Ichabod Crane, like really all out, like I don't know, the Count of Monte Cristo, just like the most over the top, like, yeah, totally on the same page
Those are
there.
both really good.
Well, Michelle, that begs the question. So, do you remember certain characters that you dressed up as?
Trying to remember. My mom always made crazy elaborate costumes. Oh, one of my best ones actually, I think, was Maleficent. That costume that my mom made was epic. I mean, all of them that she made were epic, but that one in particular, I was like, yes, very excited about that one.
Maleficent. You know, it's interesting, like the beginning though, like Halloween. It's like, it's so weird. Halloween. It's like, I love it. I love more like the idea of fall and pumpkins and the celebration. But I'm probably the biggest scaredy cat. Like, I cannot watch a horror film or a thriller. My girlfriend's been trying to get me to do it for the past like 2 years. It's just not going to happen. Maybe at some point. But I just can't, like, even your intro, like watching the ring of like the girl crawling out, I was just like, I'm not gonna watch movies. Like, that's just not happening. I'm not gonna watch anything. Like, this is just not happening. Are you totally into like scary? Totally. Like, feels like an obvious.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I love scary. But it's funny. My husband hates horror. Hates it. Like, so I watch things. Like, he's a drummer and he used to tour a bunch. He does gigs more around New York now. But when he would tour, I would watch horror movies by myself. No joke. I was watching, I forget if it was volume 1 or volume 2 of the most recent It movie. And I was watching it and there was like a rainstorm. It was really late at night and my lights started flickering. Like, no lie. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's like, it seems like a bad sign. And then, since I don't know how familiar you are with Pennywise the Clown from It, but he comes up through drains. And so I was like, I'm not going anywhere near that bathroom. Like, I will not shower.
I saw the trailer for it, like in a movie theater, like literally walking out. Like, I was just like, I'm not going to go on the street. I'm just going to be on the sidewalk. Like, genuinely, like legit, like my friends were like, dude, like, no, it's fine. I was like, 30 plus going like, no, do you remember your first horror film that you ever saw? I'm trying to think.
The first one I remember was Scream. My older cousin, actually, it might have been the original It, like the 90s It.
Okay.
One of those two with Tim Curry. Because I had cousins on either side. One of them was really into Stephen King.
Oh, wow.
And I think I watched It with that group of cousins, but then I definitely watched Scream with my other older cousin, my cousin Megan, and I remember being like, I'm cool. I'm not scared. I'm not scared at all. It's fine. I was terrified, and like the whole night I was like, is somebody outside, inside?
Okay. If you love horror films, so what's the appeal? Like, why? Like, I always ask this, and people never really say, like, why? Like,
I like being scared. I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know.
Like, the last horror film I saw, and this is like literally anyone who loves horror films just laughs at me for like genuinely getting scared at this, was the Daniel Radcliffe Woman in Black or something. It's like he goes to this house. It's like this Victorian. It scared the living heck out of me.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Literally, I remember just like turning next to my friend and going like, what's the point? Like, I'm sweating. I just spent 2 hours of my life, like, literally, I'm actually in a cold sweat. You spend money, you're getting like this like adrenaline rush of like doom. Like, I don't know. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, maybe it's the excitement. I don't know. I just really enjoy them. But then afterwards, sometimes, if lights are flickering and such, then sometimes I'm like, that was a bad idea.
Would you ever consider, because the trailer to your film looked like a thriller, have you ever gone in the horror genre or performed in a horror genre?
I mean, I would love to do a super campy horror movie. I would love that. Just lots of fake blood everywhere. I did a very bizarre experimental short film years and years ago. I don't think I've ever even seen it, but it was a horror film that involved my character eating human entrails. That was pretty fun.
That sounds cool to me.
Yeah, it was very weird.
Wow.
That's all I remember about it.
And I want to say hi to Industrial Girl for joining us down in East LA. Hi, Industrial Girl. It's good to see you. And I know you're a horror fan. She's saying that her first horror movie was Creepshow 2. Okay, I remember Creepshow 2.
I didn't see that one either.
Yeah, that's.
I just remembered mine was Night of the Living Dead, the OG black and white, like.
Oh.
That was like my baptism, like the trial by fire. It was like he lived in the middle of a forest, and it was like midnight, and his parents were asleep. He's like, "Adrian, want to see a movie?" I was like, "Oh, cool." Like dork me at like 10-year-old. I was like, "Oh, it's like some rom-com or something." I'm like, "Yay!" You know, like Narnia. He literally is like, "This is happening. You can't escape." That was
my gosh.
I didn't sleep for I think like a month. And the funny thing is, apparently a friend of my mother's was because they had no money when they made that film. Like it was like the most indie, like super indie. And there's this scene at the end where it's like the army trucks like deploy and all the guys like get out and they like start killing the zombies. I think that's vaguely how the movie ends. But apparently he was just walking down the street and suddenly like he just saw these like army trucks just like arrive and people hopping out and everything, and just kind of like, oh, like what's going on? Like this is kind of weird. I guess there must be like some kind of terrorist or I don't know what. So he kind of walked away. Like a year later, he's in the movie theater watching it, and you actually see him in the background walking. He's like, "Oh my god!"
Oh.
So little fun.
Oh, that's amazing.
Little background guy is in front of my mother's.
Oh, that's so cool.
I met the actress that played Barbara in Night of the Living Dead, Judith O'Day. So
did she talk about her experience making it? Like I'm curious, like.
Yeah, I met her. Gosh, that was like 10 years ago. I met her, and she talked about it, and she looked back on it fondly. Had a lot of laughs during trying to make it, and it being low budget, and all the kind of things that they had to go through and kind of put up with. But and I don't know if that just meant because of time, it kind of changed her viewpoint on it. Maybe when she was making it, could have been a little bit more maybe not so fun. But the thing that I remember is that this was at a convention that she was appearing at. So she was doing her panel, and then she was at her table. So I talked to her at her table. But the panel part, which has stuck to me to this day, they had 4 moderators for one guest. And I'm like, why do you need 4 people? So they kept talking and interjecting and and geeking out with every fact they could come up with from Night of the Living Dead and everything in her career. It's like, that's great, everybody, but I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from Judith. And she barely got a word in edgewise. That's what I remember. So it's always stuck with me when I ever do interviews. I need to shut up sometime. let people talk. Almost at midnight.
Wait, but Mark, what was your first horror movie that you remember?
Gosh, I think if it wasn't the first, it was definitely one of them. So I go back to the days when my parents, they still live in the same house in Kirkland, Washington, where we didn't have cable TV. We had a pirate dish. So you go up and put it on top of your house, and you get this kind of really loose, snowy signal that would come in. So all the neighbor kids would come over, and we watched the first Friday the 13th.
Oh.
And so this was before jump scares for the most part. This before the endings became very cliche. So I still remember, and I won't ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen that classic film, but just watching all the calm parts towards the end and thinking, okay, it's over, yay. And then this thing happens. It scared the crap out of me. And it gave me nightmares that night. I remember that. And to Adrian's question, there was some weird kind of yin and yang about how like I didn't like it, but at the same time I did. Like I wanted it to happen again.
You guys are weird.
I know.
Oh yeah, no problem. The Twitch channel went offline. Oh, that's weird. Okay, well, I'm glad that you're with us on YouTube. But I also remember going to my neighbor across the street, and I don't know if they had cable. I think they did have cable. I saw the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, and that was that was still disturbing. It's still disturbing to this day, that film. It holds up. It's so creepy. It's so nasty and got this whole just like kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And I did meet one of the actresses who was in that film too, and she had some really kind of not so good things to say about making that film. There's one scene where she's like tied down to a chair, and then the chair falls over. Well, they did that scene maybe 10, 12 takes, and after a few of the takes, they just left her there like this on the chair. They didn't bring her back. And I think she had like a dirty rag in her mouth. That was part of the character. And they just left her like that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That must have been traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like one of many memories she had of making that film, which maybe was why it kind of comes across so kind of almost sleazy, that film to me.
That's awful.
But I should remember her name because unfortunately she passed on. Marilyn Burns, I want to say, is her name. She's the survivor in that film. But those are the two. So ever since then, and for me being a child of the 80s, so a lot of the slasher stuff, and I showed Pinhead from Hellraiser. I met Doug Bradley and interviewed him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he's quite the gentleman. He comes from the stage. His whole thing prior to the film world, he's totally a theater actor. And I remember asking him the question about, so as a what if, because he had two roles to pick from, like small roles, either moving guy number one or guy with nails in his head or something like that was the description. So he's like, well, he said, that sounds kind of interesting. I'll pick the nail guy. I don't know what that's going to be. But it was supposed to be a really, really small part. And I guess once they developed the makeup, then they decided to increase his part in the first film.
Oh, cool.
But had he not picked that, and if he picked the move-in guy or whatever, he probably wouldn't have been back in film. Because he was saying, I just did it just as something to do. He was a struggling actor trying to make money, make ends meet. Totally figured once he was done doing that shooting sketch, he'd go right back to theater. And then that movie took off. And he played that role for several more films and everything. That's what he's most known for, is guy with the pins in his head.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
It's always so interesting, like when these like supporting roles just kind of completely steal the show. It's interesting. There's some of these like, I mean, it's a terrible. I mean, I know it's a delicate, but I was thinking about the actor who plays like Ernest Hemingway in Midnight in Paris. How he's just completely like stands out. And gosh, there's so many other films like that. Was like these unexpected characters, like these people. It's just like you're just like a day player. So suddenly people just like remember the film for this one person. It's like I always found that really interesting. I wonder what it is. If it's just the performance, is it the writing itself? Was the writer more inspired for that particular character? I always found it interesting how these characters kind of make these smaller roles really come to life. And no role is small, so I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but like, no, I've always been interested with that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of an instance of that. I'm like, it's so notable when you see it happening, but then as time passes, I'm like, I can't think of an instance.
I know. I was like, all these times, and I was like, wait.
I know. I'm like, there are several times though, and then it's like
not as memorable as we
and it's like that's who you associate with the film, and it's a small little part. Yeah. More will come to us throughout the evening.
Probably. And going back to, it's interesting what you were talking about earlier about the atmosphere on set. I think I was actually thinking back about when we first started the conversation, talking about like these horror films and how intense it is and the performances and how intense they must be. But frequently you see like when the camera cuts, even though actors are in the zone or the filmmakers, everyone's in the zone, there is still, I'm sure, levity to it. There must be some kind of release. How do you feel, Michelle? Like when you're doing your film, like, I mean, it's really intense, it seems. So it's like, obviously you're incredibly focusing your element and your moment in the zone, but it's like when they cut camera, are you kind of like occasionally like the director kind of throw a joke to kind of like get you out and then you go delve back in? I'm curious what your process was for that.
For me, personally, I mean, I've seen actors who have a very different process, but for me personally, I love that release. And so I'll be giggling like right after he yells cut, just be making jokes. And then when I know we're resetting and it's about to happen again, then I'll get back in the moment and focus again and then go through it. But for me, um, you you always have that in you, whatever you need to be expressing in the scene. I had an acting teacher who was saying you always have all the feelings you need bubbling underneath the surface, and you just have to pay attention to them or let them come out in the throughout the scenes. And so unless it's I mean there may be times, I can't think of one right now, where maybe I do need to stay focused because of circumstances outside of my control. Like maybe, I guess there are instances I can think of where I might need to stay focused because I don't know when we're going to be shooting the next take. And so I will stay at it in those moments. But if I know, oh, we have a minute and I have an understanding of the director's way of working, then I'll definitely take the time to let that go for the moment and then focus again when I need to.
Are there certain director methods that you prefer that over the years? Are there that you feel most comfortable in or more comfortable in?
I think the thing that's most important to me coming from a director is patience and clarity. I think those are the two most important things. I think sometimes you get on set and you think you're ready to do the scene and you're about to shoot it, and then sometimes some directors will start talking with the crew and start reworking the scene in the moment, and that can be a little distracting. But if they know going in exactly what they want, and you can get at least one take out with the initial idea that they had and what you'd like spoken about in rehearsals or in production meetings, and then if they want to make adjustments from there, of course. But sometimes when you think you're about to start shooting a scene and then it becomes a conversation and things start changing, it's like, okay, when are we going to shoot? And so there's a lack of clarity that makes it difficult for me to know when to do my job. And I guess in those instances, that's where I do try to stay more focused. But if I know that a director is going to come in, shoot the scene that we just discussed, and then maybe give some adjustments, and we might try it a couple different ways, then I feel like I have the freedom to let go in the moment, both on screen and off. But yeah, it's clarity and patience.
Interesting.
Yeah. What's it? Oh, go ahead.
No, please. So sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just curious that on documentaries, what is it like? Like on Steel Song, what is the energy like there amongst the crew and the subjects?
So interesting. So the crew was just basically me, the sound, and camera assistant, and it's incredibly small and intimate. It was just kind of like a, not to take the credit, but it's like I kind of just almost basically did everything essentially. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I think I've worked with actors before and I continue to practice with that and work on when I'm not shooting a documentary. And my next film actually is going to be fiction, so not a documentary.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I have a question about that too. Go on.
So, and so it's interesting. I feel like it's the same. My structure, I think, to help the individual get to a certain point emotionally, because also it's in preparation, preparing the questions. So I have a list where I actually will be like, I'm going to take this person through an emotional journey through my questions. Because I think like I've watched other filmmakers go, I've been on sets with them, and they'll just start like, they'll sit down, kind of like us before. It's like, hi, Michelle. Okay, so how was it when your mother left you? It's like, whoa, you don't just hit them with like this. Yeah. It's a whole process, right? And it's very careful because it's not in no way, and I'm sure this is with actors as well. How can I say this? I'm not manipulating the individual at all. I'm not trying to It's just I'm trying to get, first of all, comfortable with them so I can understand them, because I'm genuinely interested in who they are and their story, just as I would be with an actor and their emotional processing of the scene. So it's like you're not manipulating, you're not using tools per se, you're just trying to guide them to a place where they feel comfortable to give the performance that you're looking for, that you know. And that's for them, it's going through their life story. And then you finally enter this arc where you start, once they feel more comfortable, once you get to a place where you can tell that they're almost just not even registering that there's a camera right in front of them. They just start tuning it out. You can see it in their eyes. There's a shift in their posture. They kind of start maybe back and they'll start kind of leaning in, and they'll start calming down, and they'll start, their voice changes. And you're like, okay, I'm finding, we're entering a safe space where they feel like they trust me because I respect who they are and their stories. So yeah, it's this whole journey that's a lot of premeditation, thinking about, how am I going to hit the questions? Where do I guide them? And some questions are complete throwaway questions. Like it'll be like, I'll be like, okay, yeah. Also, like I saw like you're into painting. Like, what is that? And then what, so I'll just get them to talk, and then through talking, and sometimes I'll just start rolling the camera, and they don't even know it's rolling. I mute out that beep sound on the camera, so it just shoots, and you just start talking, and they're talking to you. And next thing you know, like, okay, that was great. They're like, oh, wait, it's, so yeah, preparation, I guess. To stop repeating myself. But yeah, preparation.
That was really, there was a moment in Steel Song with, was it Bridget with the red hair? Where she sings that song she's written, and it was so fragile and vulnerable, and like, it just felt like, I felt like I was holding my breath during that moment, because I was like, oh, it's so special to be able to capture that moment. And it felt like you gave her the space to have that moment, which felt really cool. Yeah, that was like, I got chills thinking, just even talking about it. Like, that was really special.
No, Bridget's a phenomenal woman, and her bravery. And again, what's wonderful is that, and then it's the same thing with a good set at least, is that you feel there's a family that builds. It's the strangest thing, because you grow as a family. And then like, I haven't seen her since we filmed. I haven't, and now it's like, we don't really speak, not because we don't want to, it's just because life brings you into other things. But in that moment, when you develop this relationship, you feel family, you feel so close to these people. And what's wonderful is also to see through that family, through that time together, is the growth, not just in the performance, but as people. And by performance, I'm saying that in, obviously, in a more narrative, fictional context. I mean, with documentary, it's just to see the growth in people. And like, not to talk about my film for the whole night, but what I was mentioning with Mark was, what was wonderful is that when she sung like that, because of that moment, she started going to these open mic nights. She felt
really?
To just like go out
great.
and perform. And so those are moments that I suppose I don't take the credit, because it's all from her. But I think as a filmmaker, and I would assume as a director directing a fiction, you leave feeling proud, not of yourself, but of the work that has been created, to see how these people have come into their own and how they've grown through a shared experience with you, that you're able to kind of offer this vessel that they can kind of sail out upon. And I think it's really beautiful. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And you said you also do fiction. Is that, I don't know a lot about documentary direction versus narrative direction. Is that uncommon to be directing documentaries and then also being directing fiction or narratives?
I mean, I guess in a way, but not, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I know, what's his name? Paul Greengrass, the director of not the first Born Identity, but the second and third one. He was a documentarian. And
really?
Yeah, and the director who did Cartel Land. That's the really documentary of the drugs in Mexico, the war on drugs in Mexico. He directed the film about, I saw it too. I feel so dumb right now, not remembering her name or the name of the film, but with Rosamund Pike, where she plays a very famous journalist who sadly passed away in, with a patch on her eye. I forgot. It'll come back to me. I feel embarrassed. Yes. But he was because of the success of Cartel Land, which is an incredible documentary. he was able to do that. But to me, it makes sense. Documentary, because documentaries are cheaper than, because I don't have to have, I mean, depending on the documentary and the style of documentary, usually it's cheaper where it's like, depending on the piece, but you don't necessarily have to pay, the people, they accept it. They're like,
right, yeah.
Your lives. You don't have to pay for sets, for insane lighting, for even necessarily permits technically, but it's like, it's a lot cheaper process. And to me, you learn the same, because like when I mentioned with Mark, is that I educated myself because I directed, produced, edit, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I learned so much in doing that, which I feel makes me feel more comfortable working with actors, because if you can get a performance out of someone who's not an actor, who if anything shies away from the camera, and there's an understanding that, okay, there's certain tools that you can bring with you to professional actors, people who feel more comfortable in front of camera. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah. No, but again, I feel terrible. I have to see your film. I feel really bad about it.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. I didn't, your film is beautiful, but I don't feel bad about it.
What was your journey with that? Did someone approach you? Was there a casting? Because that, to me, I mean, I get nervous even right now doing this talk. I get nervous, but it's like I can imagine being in a casting session where there's just a room, the director, producers, or whoever, and it's just like, and go. Okay, thank you. Like, the courage it takes.
Well, that was really polite. Thank you. No, most casting sessions are, well, most of them are, you're going in, they're rooting for you, right? Like, they want you to get the job. And so I always like to think about that. I'm pretty optimistic. So I always like to think, they want me to be right for it. So that's an exciting way to walk into a room. Like, they asked me to come here to audition. Like, they saw a ton of headshots, they saw a ton of reels, and they were like, yeah, we'd like you to come in. And so it's like, well, thank you for the invitation. But with Implanted in particular, it was interesting because prior to the pandemic, I had done, I don't know, I would maybe do like at the most 10 self-tape auditions in a year. Like, it was not super common. And for Implanted, this was in 2018. I saw a breakdown, and it looked like a weird sci-fi thriller. But what I actually really liked about the breakdown, there was something about it where, and in the lines that I got, the sides that I got after submitting initially, this character had some agency, even though she was in circumstances where you would think she wouldn't. And already, any character who has agency is certainly desirable, because a lot are written without that. And so that really interested me. And so, I put myself on tape and sent in the audition. And then the director called me, and we hit it off right away.
Cool.
And I had just finished, well, not just, like, I was in the process of doing some post-production, still in the process of doing post-production for a short film that I wrote and directed and produced and acted in. And so he told me, this is a small crew, it's an indie film. And I was like, oh yeah, I just worked with a small crew, like bare bones for the project I just did. I was like, yeah, I'm all in, no problem. And after we chatted, it was like, okay, yeah, this is great. And I thought he was going to call me in for a callback, but then he just called me to meet for coffee, and we chatted more. And it was just like, oh, we're going to do this together. And so, that was in 2018. And then we did about 2 weeks of principal photography then. And then we had they did a bunch of rewrites, and we ended up doing about 2 weeks more of reshoots, and then like another week that was added on to that, and then finished it in like 2019. I think we finished filming November 2019, and all we had left to do was ADR and not all, but you know, the post-production as well. And yeah, then pandemic, and so we did like ADR throughout the pandemic, and they finished post-production, and then yeah, just released it this month. So that was a journey.
Congratulations. That's really, how was it directing for you?
For me, the short that I did, that was my first time ever, and I think I was not I think I took on too many things. I think I probably shouldn't have been producing it and acting in it as well. I think now I would feel more comfortable. I have a little more experience, and so I think I would feel more comfortable now doing a project like that. But I think because I also knew that I didn't know how to do these things, I let go a little bit of my vision to kind of make other people happy, or to make it easier, so that because I like to collaborate. I don't like a lot of conflict, and so in personal relationships. And so I was so, I think, worried about creating like a positive set and making sure everybody was happy, that I think I let go a little bit of the thread that I had planned as a director, and then just also not knowing a lot about it. I think I learned a massive amount, but in projects I've directed since, I've felt much more confident voicing exactly what I want and why that's okay to voice that. I mean, I think that's also just something that comes with more experience and confidence in age, and not just in directing, but in all aspects of creating, for me.
Right. Yeah, no, it's interesting, because I was wondering, like, because how you say you learn so much, because so many, like, the great masters, especially teachers, they say they've never learned more than when they taught. And so, like, I wonder, did you learn a lot about the craft of acting through directing, where you're like, oh wait, oh okay, that makes more sense, like, or not at all? I'm curious.
Oh, I think, I mean, absolutely. I think anytime you're working on any aspect other than what you primarily do, you of course learn something. But in particular in film, I think sometimes, I guess for me, when I was younger, I probably made assumptions about why things needed to happen a certain way without knowing why they actually needed to happen. I can't think of an example, but yeah, I think directing and producing, and since then I've done some script doctoring and some other script work and writing, and I think having done those aspects, and sound, I've done some sound as well. Actually, that was like the most difficult to me, and like the most
sound does not get enough credit. Sound,
oh my gosh, it's so hard.
It is possibly one of the hardest things to do on set, and it's also the most important. And the amount of people who don't give it, like people just don't think about sound, which is so unfortunate. I feel like there's people who talk and kind of root for people who are in production sound and sound design, and it's just because sometimes like your image will be beautiful, but if your sound sucks, it's just done. I think about it, like these guys who like for example, like the documentary, like some of these takes are really long, like you're out there and he's there with the boom.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I'm like I don't, because here I am like sweating because I'm like have my camera and I'm all being a diva or whatever, but it's like he's got like the sound and he's got he's wearing it, and the people are coming close and far, and he's constantly like holding it.
Adjusting the levels, and oh my gosh.
Wow, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The thing about film, I think it's people always go like, oh, why are the credits always run forever, and and everything, and it's just that the beauty. I think one of the beautiful things about film is that even though I tend to do most things myself, but it's just the collaborative experience of it all, and how you learn so much all the time, and without these people, I mean, to see people excel in their craft is so inspiring, and to see people motivated and just all together trying to make this piece of art, it's I think, because everything is challenging, because I think for a writer, which is probably possibly the hardest thing in my opinion, because you're just staring at a blank page. Like, okay, I have to like create this world. Another position that people don't really think about, it's always the director, but the writer is essentially who gives birth to everyone and everything. But oh, there's a helicopter coming to They do this thing in LA. They love it. Helicopters in LA, they're like, I don't know. They're super loud. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's like the windows are vibrating.
Only a little bit.
Yeah. But anyways, no, it's just, I think it's wonderful to see, like, how can I explain it? I just feel so inspired when you see someone give it their all, and they put in the, and it's the communication, I can go on some tangents, so I'll just say you learn a lot. It's really inspiring. I'm just going to stop now before I go somewhere else. I think it's, because you said you directed and produced. Did you edit as well, or because you would write?
I'm in the process of editing, which that is also like that's interesting too. I think as an actor, just thinking about continuity, which is something that I was conscious of before, but like in editing, thinking about the continuity of different shots, editing it myself, I'm like, oh, I can make this so much easier for people. Like, as an actor, when I'm acting, there are things I can do that would be really nice for the editor.
You feel like you're almost rewriting your film in the editing process?
Completely. In particular with this, I think because I let my vision get a little wobbly, it's like, okay, let's streamline this again and like figure it out. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
It's interesting with growth. Like, I look back at Steel Song. I was actually just thinking about this morning. I'm like, you know what? Like, I would have done it completely differently now. Like, I think I'm like, I would have started it so differently. I would have done the whole film. So, but that's what's so beautiful about film, is that you get to look back at your growth. And I think that's really
that I like that aspect of it a lot too, because it's such a beautiful snapshot of where you were in that moment in your career. And that's, you have this thing where you can look back and just say, oh yeah, that was, that's who I was in that moment as a performer or as an artist. And it's really cool that we have that to, I guess, look back on.
Do you ever rewatch your things? Do you talk about it? Or do you just kind of, I haven't watched Steel Song. I think like part of me would be hard to do for many reasons.
Yeah.
Like it's because I'm overly critical, and I'm really working on that on my work.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really hard to watch stuff. And again, to be very clear, I am so proud of everyone in it and what it has achieved. I'm just saying, me as a filmmaker and the technical aspect, but do you ever rewatch your work or even talk about it when it's done, or just kind of on to the next thing?
I would love to be the person who's just on to the next thing. But I'm very, I understand the critical aspects. I'm trying to be proud of where I was in that moment and not overanalyze the things that I would now change with more experience and knowledge. But I do not like watching myself one bit. It's such an awkward thing.
Do you do a lot of theater?
I mean, I do whatever comes my way. I do. I love theater. I do love the medium of film and TV. Like I do really love all forms of that allow acting to be expressed. But I mean, yeah, it is. There are things about theater that I love. You have a snapshot of a moment that's just your memory. It's not usually, I mean, sure, some things will get filmed, but you also have so many goes at the thing. Like, you have so many different, you can try something different, or like play for so long. And you can go through the emotions chronologically in most cases, unless it's a non-linear narrative. But then in film and TV, you can be so much more nuanced and take your time in other aspects of it. Yeah, but I do not like watching things. I mean, I try to watch and appreciate what everybody else has put into the project. But it's been weird. Implanted is the first feature I've been a lead in, and it's a lot of me. So it's been weird. Like, we had a screening of it, a small screening, was it last week or the week before? And I was shaking as I was watching it, because I was like, this is so awkward, and like, I'm so uncomfortable. Then there were a couple moments where I was just like, I just need to not be looking at this for a moment. And I was like, I'm just gonna listen to this beautiful soundtrack because it sounds awesome. But yeah, I do try to not pay attention to just myself and like think like, oh wow, like the framing here was really great, or the lighting, and I try to appreciate the other aspects, and that was a great cut, or but yeah, that's real.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think it's funny because actors say that a lot. What you said, the difference between theater and being on screen, and also I think the beauty of the moment in theater, where you just have the memory of what you said beautifully, eloquently, just the kind of like the memory of the moment, the beauty of that. But with film, it's like you can just rewatch. It's like filming almost. I think I would assume you would probably think, yeah, obviously you remember the process and those beautiful moments, but it's also more just like what you see. You can keep constantly see, but there's just something so precious about the stage. And what's funny is that though everyone thinks the same thing. Also, if you're lighting or costume or filmmaker, right? Because you go to the screening, you're sweating bullets about your performance. The guy's sweating bullets. It's like, God, oh my God, it's so underexposed.
Right.
Playing sucks. And then the director's like, oh my gosh, I should have just done that shot differently. Everyone is probably watching moments being really proud, don't get me wrong, but also those moments where it's like, and you think that everyone's just thinking about, like the audience is thinking about your aspect of the film.
Right,
like, the performance, the directing, or the editing, or the sound. Like, the sound guy, I remember one time he looked at me and was like, bro, like, I'm so sorry, like I'm sure people are just, and like no one mentioned the sound. People were like, it's this great, it's fun, like it's like, but everyone's just thinking about it's like, oh, it's like no, audiences kind of take it in as a whole.
All of it.
It's like, it's so interesting that we're all in this together kind of thing. I love to do theater. That's one thing I've yet to. I've done ballet, so I know the idea of being on stage. So I know the idea of being on stage and the moment. A choreographer said it's like a butterfly. It's like these months of just pain and everything, and then you just fly for 4 days and you're done. That's it. It's real. But I'd love to direct theater. I think that's.
Have you directed theater?
No, that would be a dream of mine, is to find a way to get with a group of actors and kind of make that happen, is being a theater. And this sounds really pretentious, but opera as well. I think.
Oh no, I love opera.
An opera or a musical, I think that would be such a blast.
Yeah.
And it's like, just as in theater, you have the words, the script carry you. It's like you have that additional thing with the music and the orchestra. It's like a whole other vibe that I think.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, opera has changed too. It's no longer those days of just kind of standing in place and belting it out. Now it's like they're actors. They have to do everything. They have to dance and sing and perform. Same obviously with musical, which, by the way, Cyrano, I find that a really interesting take. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with that. Peter Dinklage as Cyrano.
Yeah.
Really curious to see. I mean, that's bold to go of a musical over that story, which is such a classic in French literature.
My inkling is that it's going to be great. That's my.
He's amazing.
My inkling. Oh,
yeah.
So great.
I know. It's insane. It's funny because you say like you do less, well, the nuance. I remember, what is my brain tonight in names? I feel so bad.
Oh, it happens.
Mark, I'm going to butcher his last name. Mark Rylance?
Oh, Rylance. Yeah.
Legend, right?
He's amazing, yeah.
Right? Whatever. So Wolf Hall, I remember when I first discovered it, completely was blown away by the music. His performance was insane. And I remember they were talking about interviews like, how did you get like those nuanced performances where it's just like a look says everything and everything says, well, you know, Brad Pitt. And everyone was like, wait. Like literally, I love to the interview. It's like, you know, some like BBC journalists like, you know, oh yeah, so you know, it's like there's like this moment of silence. Oh, like Brad Pitt, and the guy was kind of like, Brad Pitt, you know. He said, yeah, it was the assassination of Jesse James, which is a beautiful film. And he said Brad Pitt's performance in that was so nuanced and so subtle, and less is more on camera because he's obviously Shakespeare in the play. And what you're talking about, it's just you emote a lot more because you're projecting. It's a totally different. So if you do that in front of a camera, you know, I mean, I don't know.
It's a lot.
It's like it's way too much. How do you reel it in? What's your process like? I'm actually, because especially like that fine line between, especially like just the emotion you're projecting, it's talking about emotion and emoting in that sense, and like, you know, having basically a breakdown on camera. What's your journey? What's your process to go like, I know that I'm not, because I'm sure there's also like, you're aware, I'm sure even though you're in the moment, you must be aware with your face and, you know, how am I don't know. So I'm asking the question. Like, I'm curious.
For me, it depends on the set and the circumstances. I mean, I always prepare in a pretty similar way that's like pretty boring and analytical. I always prep a ton and then allow for wherever the moment takes me, I let it go in that. But like, yeah, for scenes where it's a breakdown, I'm a little vain, but I'm not terribly vain. So I don't really think about how I look.
Okay.
Which when you see the movie Implanted, yeah, you'll notice. Not looking good. Real rough. So I mean, unless the character is somebody who's thinking about that.
Right.
Like, yeah, for example, like in Implanted, she's just all in her head and not thinking at all about other people's perceptions of her. So that actually allowed for a lot of freedom, in particular in those scenes, because she's not self-conscious about what's going on or if it's too much or too little, you know, she's not worried about that. And so that gave me a lot of freedom to play with just breaking down and just allowing it to happen. And in particular with the way that that director films it, like I would just go until he yelled cut, and he does a lot of like stolen shots and grabs a lot of what he can without cutting. And so he might get it from one angle and he's going to keep going. And so I just keep going until he would yell cut. And even like sometimes I would be walking down the street in Brooklyn, and in the film, sometimes the chip that is implanted in her head causes like physical pain. And I remember filming scenes walking around in Brooklyn, and I'm supposed to be massive amounts of pain and have this horrible headache, and I wouldn't always know where the camera was. So it
Interesting.
was just experiencing that. And actually, one time, this really nice woman came up to me while we were filming, and I didn't know if the camera was still rolling or not. And she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just have a really bad headache." And she's like, "Do you need some like Advil?" And I was like, "No, I'm okay. I'm okay." And she's like, "I have some essential oils." And she's like, "Here, let me give you some of these essential oils. It really helps me." And she gave me some like essential oils. I was like, "Thank you so much." But I just, kept going because I didn't know where he was or if he was still rolling, which is, unlike a situation in a studio where it's like the camera's right here and you're like, okay.
Cool. I love that. I imagine it's actually part of his plan. She's like, "Do you want essential oils?" Ha ha ha!
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and that was the thing. We did have some improvised moments, and sometimes he was like, "Yeah." Sometimes we might have actors come in. She was not, but in that particular filming instance, I just went through, just experienced whatever was happening based on her journey and where she was in that journey. That was an interesting one.
Yeah, I guess in a way, kind of docu style. I guess it's kind of, you just go in a way. It's like, okay, so you're just gonna walk down the street, and I mean, obviously he's saying more than that, but it's like, and go, and he gets what he gets. I find that.
Yeah. And it was, sometimes I was just gonna say the same thing. So, rambling.
Let me jump in real quick and kind of catch up with. We've had some questions come through, and first, happy Halloween to you, Captain Blackwood, as well, down in Las Vegas, joining us, and also another person that I met, now friend through the Alice tour, and staying with Industrial Girl. And let's see, Industrial Girl asked something. Let me scroll back away here. There it is. What has been, in your opinion, and we can get back to it, I'm not trying to like steer this some other direction, I'm just trying to catch up with the chat stuff. What has been, in your opinion, one of the best recent horror movie or horror franchises? She says the Conjuring franchise is the one she goes with.
Oh, Adrian, I'm sure you have a strong opinion about this.
I know, with my incredible horror knowledge. Wow, let me tell you. I'd say, from the little that I've seen, and I don't know if it's a franchise, but it's the series Haunting of Hill House.
Oh.
The little that I've seen, I thought that the director and the performances of that were really beautiful because they took a really human aspect, essentially just the idea of grief, and played with it, and really went. To me, if I were to watch a horror film, it would be, again, I think I mentioned this before with documentaries, is I think in just any film, any story, it's relatability. And I think certain films, I guess it depends, right? I don't know. I'm not at all, as you know, the best person to ask about horror, but I mean, I think horror film, there's different genres. There's just a pure escapism, blood and guts, like just I don't think you even necessarily relate. You just are just scared. It's just kind of just tuning out, and maybe for some it's coping with their anxieties, they just tune out and watch something. But I think where horror films succeed, which is probably The Conjuring, which you mentioned, or I think would be The Haunting of Hill House, even though I haven't entirely watched it, but I have certain excerpts of it. Yeah, it's just that relatability, is that how directors, writers, actors find a story and which makes it even more petrifying, is because it reminds us of either the darker parts of ourselves, or emotions and feelings that we had bottled up and don't want to, we kind of kept at bay, and that these horror films kind of bring them out in entertaining ways, but we can respond, we can be even more frightened with the actor or actress, or just, but to me, I don't know if that, it's just kind of blah, 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 but I would say The Haunting, because I feel like it's from what I've seen, there's really beautiful moments, and I feel like that's what has made it so successful, is because we can all relate to the characters, one of the characters at least in that series.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you were just talking, I also realized I have done horror series. I did a Stephen King series called Lisey's Story on Apple TV.
I love it. I'm like, oh, have you ever done horror? You're like, I don't know.
like,
Oh, by the way, Stephen King. Oh, okay, that guy.
Well, it didn't feel super horror-y. It felt more thriller. Like I had a small role in it, but I guess my character is like covered in blood and talking about how she killed everybody at her wedding. So I don't know. It didn't feel like horror.
Yeah, like relatability. So those times I thought about my husband, that's what got me into character.
Let's see. But to the question, I don't know about the franchises. My favorite horror movie though is still The Babadook. I love that movie.
Oh.
It's just beautiful. It's so scary, but so beautiful.
The one that I still have yet to like just kind of muster the courage is The Shining.
I love that movie too.
I think that will probably traumatize me. I'll never be able to go to hell or see twins or anything. Like but I kind of have to. I feel like Kubrick's one of those guys where it's like his films, you don't necessarily rewatch them, but you're watching a true genius, and it's just, I mean, to me, 2001: Space Odyssey and Barry Lyndon are.
Oh yeah, Barry Lyndon.
You
were talking about you like period pieces. Yeah. That's a good one.
I'm a dork, I know, but I love period pieces, and Barry Lyndon. I have to say, it's for anyone watching who's into period pieces, watch Barry Lyndon because it's unbelievable. How about you, Mark? Help us out here.
Franchises.
Yeah, come on.
Oh,
Halloween.
Yeah.
That's the first one I said.
What's hard about it for me when it comes to horror franchises is that there's always bad ones in the franchise.
That's true.
That's what's hard. I can't think of one that has, say, 4 or 5 films in the franchise that I think that's like a strong from all 5 of them. There's always one that's kind of the dud. Having said that, one film that I thought about that it's not necessarily horror, but it has horror elements. So, Adrian, it might be like a transition movie for you to kind of get yourself into that genre.
Or like,
and don't see the American version. See the original South Korean version of A Tale of Two Sisters. It's a beautiful film. It's really psychologically kind of disturbing, but like you're talking about, there's a relatability to what the sisters are going through in that film. And there's some surprises and some things that some twists in it. So there's this whole different mix of things. I've watched and rewatched that film I don't know how many times because I always get something new out of it when I watch it. And so to me, some people think it's a horror film because of certain elements, but to me, it's more just like it's not even a thriller. It's just like more of a dramatic study that has those other elements woven into it. It's really, really intriguing. And that director, and oh my gosh, now I forgot his name, is spectacular anyway. His body of work is just, I could study it for days, type of thing. So, but, it's funny that the Industrial Girl mentioned the Conjuring series because I do have the 3rd one on disc that I got from the library this week. So I do plan on watching that on Halloween night as something to watch because I haven't seen it yet. So
fun.
I'll see if I love the second one, and I think the first one was pretty good. I love the second Conjuring. That was really, really good. But the 3rd one, jury's out. We'll find out after Sunday night. But I do see that she also mentioned, Adrian, that when you're talking about, she says the movie is called A Private War. Is that what you were?
Yes. Thank you.
I don't know that one.
Thank you. See it. It's incredible. Really good. My gosh. Talk about, and I feel terrible that I don't remember the journalist's name, but like it really talks about war and what it does to people. And it's haunting, it's beautiful, and it's, how was it filming? That's so funny.
It was weird. I just felt like sometimes I just felt like a crazy person because day players would come on set and I'd actually get to talk to another actor and I'd be so excited to talk to another person. I was like, that's weird. But also, it was really interesting. So sometimes we would have a reader who would read the lines of the chip to me so that I could respond to an actual person. But that wasn't always the case. Small indie set. So when that wasn't the case, I didn't know when that was going to happen, or I didn't know when a reader would be scheduled or when I would just have to know the line in my head, time it out, react to it. So I just memorized all of the chips lines as well and was actually just talking to myself in my head a lot. Which is strange because as an actor, we like talking, but we really like talking with other people and reacting and listening and talking to people. But so, it was very strange. And then it was, it was very, kind of self-fulfilling alienation because like in the film, the chip's supposed to be like alienating her from people. But then in like the filming of it, it's a little meta. It was actually a little isolating. I mean, I was really close with the crew and we were all like a family, but within the scenes I got so used to just talking to myself that whenever another person was there, it was like, oh wait, how do I talk to a person? So it was odd. It was a unusual experience for for such a long period of time to not have other people to act with.
There we go. There you go, Destro Girl. Thank you for the question. And thank you for Kim Ji Woon was the director. Okay, of Tale of Two Sisters.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I needed some help.
That movie is so beautiful. It's so beautifully shot. The Tale of Two Sisters.
Yeah.
So pretty. The lighting's amazing.
I actually got a chance to see that in the theater.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I saw it at home first, and then there was a independent movie house here that was doing a screening for like a week. So I said, I gotta go. I gotta go see that.
That's a good one. I bet that was a good one to see in theaters.
I want to see what's it called? Last Night in Soho. Is that what it's called? I think.
Oh yeah, that looks really interesting.
That looks amazing.
So many good actors.
What do you think separates a thriller from a horror film? What's the difference?
I don't know.
Because some are like both are sometimes like there are like thrillers that have like ghosts, but they're not necessarily horror.
Right.
So what's the difference? Because they both scare you and F with you mentally. Like you still can leave a thriller. Right. So I wonder what makes them. We should.
Mark, I feel like you might have an answer to that, right? You've watched a lot of both.
Exactly. Come on, Mark. Help us out here.
Oh boy.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. I have watched a lot of both. Now that's a really, really great question because I guess for me, when I think of, and maybe this is just me being the way I am, when I think of a thriller, I'm never scared watching that. There's nothing scary about a thriller to me. It's more the adrenaline rush, trying to figure out what's the character going to do in those situations. Versus a horror film, it starts getting to me internally if it's done really well. I'm frightened. I'm scared for what's going on either on screen or even around me. Though my imagination starts to take over. And like I know Michelle was saying about when you were watching, oh gosh, now my memory's going. Yeah, that about the drains and anything else around you. It starts seeping from the television to the theater screen to your real life. Thrillers for me never do that. Ever. To me, it's strictly on the screen, and I don't know why that is. It's easy to separate for me.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that is a good question.
Thanks, Industrial Girl. Yeah, and have a good dinner and a good night down there in East LA. I see you have to jet.
East
LA. But I guess. I don't know. I guess the other thing too, when I think of thrillers, there's always somebody in peril. Could be trapped in a house. It could be like a crime thriller type of thing, where they're after a serial killer. Or Silence of the Lambs to me is a little thriller.
Yeah.
So we also might be speaking maybe about different types of films in that genre or subgenre. I'm getting my brain is so squishy right now with I just finished like the 7th film festival this year, so I've seen so
Oh
many
my gosh.
things.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't like Silence of the Lambs be a horror film? Technically, I mean, what's going on in that movie is, I find it
Yeah,
petrifying.
that's interesting. Yeah, that one's kind of on
Yeah.
the line, isn't it?
Right. So how? I wonder. I guess I'm sure there's like a dictionary definition of what's.
Definitive. Should I look it up?
I was just about to say.
Give us the answers. Let's see. What should I look up? How is
What?
What are you looking up? I'm looking up how is a thriller different from a horror movie?
This would be perfect if that Lex voice came over right now. And
Yeah,
started
it's just like
talking.
the difference between.
Yeah.
Or that would be funny if the answer was just the conversation we just had. Where it's like, please refer to 10 seconds ago. Let's see. No Film School has an answer for us.
Okay.
No Film School says, horror is the seemingly inevitable but predictable doom where the climax of the movie is either getting away or stopping the evil, whereas thrillers are all about a tension-filled story that's not predictable.
Okay.
So horror is seemingly inevitable but predictable, where the climax is either getting away with or stopping the evil, and then a thriller is about an unpredictable. But I feel like some horror movies are unpredictable.
Yeah,
Are they not?
and that's what makes them scary to me.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay.
that's all I got from No Film School.
And Adrian, you actually do bring up a good point, because I remember when Silence of the Lambs won the Oscar, because I was in college at that time, so I was watching the broadcast, and they kept talking about the first horror movie to win the Best Picture, first horror movie. Yeah, it was a big thing that they kept putting in that cat. Yeah, and like you said, based on what happens in that film, that's very horrific. But having said that, I still never, like when I went to bed that night, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about like that creaky noise I just heard, and that maybe Hannibal Lecter's there, wanting to with some fava beans and a Chianti and all that. It was, again, that might just be for me personally, that somehow I separate that out. Like when I watch The Conjuring on Sunday night, it might give me nightmares. I don't know. Gosh.
I feel like that movie, Silence of the Lambs, gave me nightmares, but it was because my friend David Hemmer would come by and brush my hair and go, "Hello, Clarice."
Like not okay. Like this.
Calling you out, David Hemmer. Calling you out.
No, I would not. No. That's like a no-go zone. You just don't. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I would probably scream and embarrass everyone in the movie theater if anyone was to like do no. But it's got to happen. I promised my girlfriend. So we're gonna watch at some point. I don't know what we're gonna watch, what she has in store for me, but it's gonna be.
Start with The Shining. Start with The Shining.
I'm genuinely getting nervous, like thinking about it. Like, like you guys have gone to like these like what are they called? Like they're like they're here. It's called like Not Scary Farm and oh my gosh, what's it called? Universal Horror Night. So it's like where people you go to mazes and people like jump at you.
Oh
and, like,
yeah.
Costume and I'm like, why? I don't know. I guess I don't know. Just why? I'm not gonna get back to that conversation, but why? I don't know.
Yeah, it is a weird thing.
I would love to film a horror film.
Really? Well, yeah, filming it would be fun.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
Scary.
I would love to film one. Some really messed up psychological, just like, oh my god, amazing.
Let's make one.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Especially because you're in the East Coast. It's beautiful there. There's some woods. It's like that's the thing. Is the location's so important too. Like I feel like people in Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
It's so easy. If you live in Europe, I can shoot anything. Like, oh, I want to do like a period piece. No problem. Let's just go
These buildings.
And like SoCal, it's like rooftop, desert, ocean or like warehouse.
Art Deco.
It's like, I know, right? You're like, gosh, it's so limited. But it's like East Coast, you have that like that kind of that where you can find these old
you can fake
areas
some of
and
it.
take it away. And yeah, you have more variety. Here it's so hard. Even though ironically this is like LA, they built it here because it's like of the weather, but it's like you're ironically really limited. Sets.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be so great to film this or just grab a camera and go and film that. But I'm like, it's just desert, ocean, and the forests here are beautiful, but they don't have that, I don't know, other states have this vibe. There's a beauty to the forest. It's kind of lush. There's a difference aesthetically. Here it's like oak. It's a very different kind of like, so it's like immediately if you film it, people are like, oh, that's like SoCal. That's Cali.
Right.
But you can get away with other things if you want to film some, I don't know, like, but so you're lucky. East Coast.
True. I'm like, what am I doing? I am lucky. I'm taking it for granted. Why am I not filming things all the time?
It's like your feed just ends. I wonder if it's ever happened to you. Someone just gets totally carried away. It's like, you know what? I'm going
now. I have a camera. I have lights.
You know what? I don't need this anymore.
It's dark now. That'd be terrible to film right now.
Has it ever happened to you, Mark? Like in a conversation where someone just goes, like they get just like suddenly get hit by some inspiration or have like what's like the weirdest besides my interviews? What's like the weirdest interview you had?
The weirdest oh my gosh.
No pressure. No pressure. Putting you on the spot. You can cut this out, even though
we want names.
Well, the first person that comes to mind who will remain nameless was they didn't get an epiphany and leave. they were just. I'll be completely honest. I've done 255 of these. I've done in-persons before this, before the pandemic and all that. This person was very odd. Live, they were very odd. I could not relate to them. I couldn't get them centered. I couldn't get them. They were comfortable because they're expressing themselves, so that's always good. But I was just listening like I normally do and trying to formulate questions in my head because a lot of times I don't write any questions down when I do my interviews. Some people don't realize that. I go off the topics based on what the guest is talking about. And this gal was just off in La La Land. I don't know what. I've actually rewatched that interview to see, was it just me during that day and that time when I was watching? Maybe I was in a mood. No. And there's nothing wrong with, she wasn't being rude or being mean. She was just from a different planet. And I could not relate to her whatsoever. And that threw me for a loop because I knew her music. I was like, oh, wow, the music's really good. That's why I'd like to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And the communication was strong. And then she came on, before we went live, and that was okay. I got a little glimpse of her oddness. And then we went live, and it was like, okay, now what do I do as the interviewer? Because this is so weird for me. And again, not to toot my own horn, but usually I can find ways to get the interview in the right direction that I want it to go through different skill sets that I use. This one, I was completely at a loss. I just didn't.
What did you do?
I just let her talk, and then I tried to think of like, this is really horrible to say, but kind of generic questions that I normally would not throw at somebody because I didn't know what else to ask.
Yeah.
It was like,
awkward.
It's like, how do you ask somebody a question when you don't quite understand what they just said?
Yeah.
She might have been as well as been speaking in Penguin to me or something. It was so odd.
Oh no!
Your interview is just quiet in your life, and it's just nothing. Like no one knows what to say. It's just silence. That's like, I think like being interviewed. It's like, ironically, it's like you have to kind of like, even though you're having a bad day, it's like you have to be present. Ironically, it's like you bring like your craft with you, and because it's like, especially if you're live, it's not going to be cut or whatever. It's like it's not fake, but there's still like this thing where it's like you have to kind of push aside either your insecurities, your fears, you're having a bad day, a good day, you're a little off or whatever. It's like, I think about that, like some of these usually I'm assuming it's more actors who are usually more interviewed for the press release and everything for films than a director. I think about like, wow, like sitting through, I mean, constantly touring, and I'm sure like even the biggest names who are used to it might even feel relatively comfortable. I mean, they must have off days or days where they just don't want to do it, but it's like you just it's putting yourself aside, or I don't know. Yeah, I find that interesting. That's one thing I've learned because I've always been behind the camera, right? And so it's like now with this, oh, like Adrian time, I'm like, oh my god. So it's like you see your face in live view. It's like it's a whole other thing. So it's cool being interviewed because it's like now I'm like, oh, okay, now. So that's like that's what it feels like. It's that idea of like being on the other end. I find that really interesting and educating too, because I'm like, okay, now I understand. Next time I interview someone, maybe try this or try that or whatever. How is, because I'm sure you've been interviewed and stuff. Have you ever? But you've never been on a documentary or the subject of a piece, right, Michelle? Or it's like, are you more like?
I have actually.
You have?
It hasn't been released. Yeah,
So I've never been in a horror film. Oh, I've never been in a documentary. Like, all of a sudden, like all these things are coming out. It's like I actually it's like
I do that all the time. I have this thing where it's like I'm so focused on the moment, or like focused on like the 5 things that are circling in my like periphery right now. And so it's like that's where my attention goes, and then it's like, oh wait, but I did all of these other things. It's like they're out on the outer webs. Like these are the things that are in the little like spider webs around here, and then it branches out. It hasn't. I don't know if it will be released, but I was one of the performers who was being followed for. I think the documentary is primarily about this, about a singing coach, and they filmed our master classes with this coach, and I think it followed primarily the vocal coach, and then several singers and actors working with him on material from musicals. And then, we were interviewed a bit, like just as some little backstories. But they filmed us for probably over the course of maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks. Like we would have a one class a week. But I don't know if that will ever be released.
Did you feel a difference being filmed in a personal space versus being filmed as an actress?
I felt much more uncomfortable being like in the interviews about myself. I felt very naked and much more uncomfortable than I feel acting. Also because it was we were being filmed. I think I didn't mind as much. Like the interview part made me really uncomfortable, but the like filming of the classes didn't really bother me, because it was like, oh, we're performing songs and getting feedback on them, and so that didn't feel much different from taking other classes, or because a lot of classes will be filmed anyways, or performing a piece in front of an audience or on camera for something. So that aspect didn't feel much different. But then the interview, I was like, oh, this is really awkward. And I started crying, and I was like, oh gosh. Like, I don't care if I cry like in my acting moments, but as a human, it's like, oh gosh, this is mortifying. It was weird.
That's interesting you say that, because it's like how the technical besides being real, and yet there's something so real in performing, ironic. So, and yet there's just like this hat you put on where it's like I'm performing, and I'm sure you're those tears, as you say, it's a technique, I'm guessing, right? That comes from somewhere true. Does it, or is it more of a technique, or I don't know? I'm sure it changes every time, probably.
I mean, for me, like, it's I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure it's based on technique that has been built. But now the way that extreme emotions come out for me, it's, you know, like if it's written in the script and then she cries, it's like, well, I might cry, but that might not happen in that moment. And so there is the technique that's at the basis that informs all of my prep and informs how I go into the scene. But then once I'm in that scene, wherever that character goes, that's where I let it. It's you know what it is. It's an allowing myself to experience those real emotions. Like I still experience it. Like I still feel the exhaustion of like having a breakdown when I'm doing it on camera. But I think in everyday life I'm much more composed. I think we walk around as pretty composed people. Like that's what's socially acceptable. And so like in particular in that instance, like where I said I was crying in the interview, I'm like, oh gosh, that's not composed. Like that's like not a moment where I would usually allow myself to let that emotion come out. But I think in acting, it's like, depending on the circumstance, yeah, if that's what the character allows for themselves, then absolutely. Or, you know, if it's what I would allow myself in a private moment, of course, that's what the character is going to get as well. But I think it's that, that the difference for me is that in my everyday life, that's maybe not what I would allow myself to pay attention to.
Interesting. Yeah, there's such a, from my experience dancing professionally, there's something so sacred about, and it's a kind of a big word to use, but I do believe that. And the rehearsal room.
Oh yeah.
It's like I preferred actually dancing, and a lot of dancers actually, ironically, you almost dance more for the preparation than the performance itself for a lot of dancers, because there's something so, it's not vain in the sense of like, oh, like it's just me. And it's like, no, it's like you, I don't know how to explain it. You feel really in tuned in a way to express yourself, and you're sharing it with with people you know, with the fellow dancers, not just this empty black wall where that feels, that almost sometimes to me felt almost, because it's just like, oh, this is just about, it's not, but I mean, this is a massive exaggeration, but it's like, oh, it's just me emoting, versus when you're in this private space with these dancers and you're really riffing off each other and sharing this moment with the music and emotion or something. I feel like the communication is more true almost in those moments, whereas like when you're in front of an audience, that black box, there's almost like a technical thing that comes up because you're so nervous. For me, who suffers from anxiety, it's like you can be so nervous. It's like, okay, you kind of have to like calm it down, which can sometimes take away from those. Now, don't get me wrong, some moments have been really special, and again, in an exaggerated way, but I feel like there's that kind of switch. But to go back, I digress. It's like we sometimes have like these like, oh, like the board comes in, or like, you know, open rehearsal room day, and you have these people come in and you feel like they're intruding. And so it's going back to what you're saying, this camera team walking in, it's like you feel like they're these people are just kind of, that magic is just cut all the time. It's like it's someone like walking to your home, literally, that you don't. And it's, how do you make, so for me, it's interesting to hear that as doing documentaries and say, well, how do you, again, make people feel comfortable? But I can totally understand what you're saying. It's like how, it's like there's just something a little, how do you sing in this space that you know that you're usually safe? You're no longer safe. You're on the spot again. Just confirm.
That's interesting what you were saying about the rehearsal rooms too. That made me think about something that I really enjoy is the whole process of making a thing. Like I love the process of filmmaking. I love the process of rehearsing, and I just love the process. And then what you get at the end of the process is the product, right? Which might be the performance or might be the film, and that's kind of the fruits of the labor, but I enjoy the labor. And so there's also that that feeling of not worrying about what the product will be to some extent, like the enjoying the process and enjoying the freedom to play, but then once it's a product, it's set. And I think there's something about that that's that's, I don't know, that aspect is less enjoyable to me than creating the thing. I just thought of that while you were talking about the rehearsal rooms.
What do you think makes us feel that way? Is it because we feel more safe? Is it the people? I wonder, like, what the process, like, what is it about the process that we find more powerful in a way? More, why does it resonate to us more, do you think? For you, when you're saying the process versus the final product, like what? It's a very broad question, but
yeah, I think for me, the process is where you get to experiment, you get to grow, you get to learn, you get to play, you get to collaborate, and that does, yeah, certainly continue in some in some ways, like in theater. But like in particular in film, it's like when you have this finished product, the fruits of your labor. I was talking about this with my therapist. The fruits of your labor, it's like that's great, and that's a beautiful moment that has been captured, but you're already done with the part that was enjoyable, the part that was creating something. I think that's what it is. The creating is the fun, exciting part where you learn and grow and you get better and you get to play with other people and learn from other people. And then when it's done, you have a product, which is what people examine and what they judge and what they enjoy and what they want to talk about. But the thing that's more special to me is having that time to create.
Cliche.
What about you?
Cliche or corny, but I feel it's just such a reflection of life. You know.
Yes, just, enjoying the journey.
Literally, you know, it's not the book. It's not so much the end as the book itself. You know, it's a good book.
Yeah,
that's enjoyable. But for me, it's. Yeah, I don't know how you answer that question because I don't know what makes that moment so special? What makes that creative process? Is it the people? Is it, I don't know how to answer that. It's interesting. Yeah, why? I don't know how you did it. You answered it very eloquently. And
my therapist.
Yeah.
We've really been talking about it a lot.
So take this card. Oh, for this kind of question, take this card. It's like answers, you know, the joy of the journey. It's just, I guess it's a very broad answer, but it's just the whole, all of it. It's just growing. I think there's such joy in feeling growth with its challenges, because there are moments that are incredibly difficult. But yeah, blah blah blah. But yeah, no,
we were. My therapist and I were talking about it a lot in like the terms of like the film coming out. You know, it's you know, some people really enjoy, like, that's what they're excited about, is like they have something they've created, and it's a physical thing that they can show, and that is great. I do appreciate that, but I think for me, I'm just so excited about doing it. I'm so antsy to do things rather than have a thing. If that makes sense.
Do you find your conversations different when you speak with an actor than a I'll just say it, a director, a filmmaker? Do you find your explanations, or do you find like the way you speak about your craft, your work, do you find it differs from, I mean, besides the obvious technical aspects, which is kind of like the art form in itself, do you find the conversations to kind of shift or be different? Like, do you find yourself different when you're talking to a director than an actor?
I find it's less about whether they're a director or actor and more about who the person is.
Well said. Yeah.
I just think in particular about certain directors as people who are, again, like very patient and thoughtful and prepared and see things holistically, who I would speak the same way to them as I would to an actor. I think I'm thinking of two particular people. I have an actor friend who also views things very holistically, I guess. And so I would speak to those people, I think, similarly. But then there's another director who comes to mind who's impatient and very tech oriented, very technical, not as interested about depth of story and things like that. And so with that person, I would speak differently about it, because I don't think they would be interested in the things that I value.
Yeah, going with this, and just what you were talking about earlier, like that balance between like, well, what's too much, what's, this, it's always like feels like you're on a tightrope. It's like, also I feel like as a director, it's like when you're talking to the actor for a scene, it's like the word is some guy just tells you like the story of your life in this thing. And you're like, after like an hour, you're like, I got it.
Yeah.
Like, just go for it. Or the extreme where it's just nothing. It's like, and go.
Yeah.
And you're wait, what? It's like that kind of that fine line of just sometimes you just all you need sometimes just like the look. The actor can just look over the actor, and the director will be like, you'll be like, oh, right, okay, I know where you're going. Or it's just like a word that that verb or whatever, what have you. It's just finding that balance in the moment. It's a fun dance. It's a ballet.
It is.
It's
back
and forth.
It's also really interesting. What I find, and I'm sure you found it as well, working with the director-actor relationship. You just click with some people. It's like any relationship. It's like some people you just have a great rapport and you just get on really well, and you get what the person's looking for. And then other people you're like, you're an alien. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is like, or I'm the alien. This is my first time on Earth. I don't know what we're talking about.
Or multiple interviews of like, and these are big names talking about other big names, and they just will be like, I don't gel with him or her. I just don't. So I turned it down just for that reason alone. Even though the story was great or whatever, but it's like, I'm not going to spend, 3 weeks, a month of my life with these people that I just don't connect with. I'm not going to be able to offer good material, which goes, again, that performance aspect is just, it's people. And then what you're saying earlier, it's just a connection. It's about the people, and through people you create that art in those moments that we see on screen and that people can enjoy because they relate.
Yep, bringing it back. Director, keeping us on track.
Well, and wouldn't you kind of say that that's also true of like any artistic form that you do? I know for myself, I can relate to what you guys are just talking about.
Oh yeah.
As a musician, as a photographer, anyone that I've collaborated with, there's definitely people that I instantly clicked with. Models that I met, talking to them for less than a minute, and we're already talking about something that we have some odd thing in common that we thought no one else likes that film or something. How do you know about that? And then off we go. And there's someone else who has been doing it for 10 years, and they can bring all of this wealth of skill set and experience to whatever project I'm working on. And I just cannot, you can just tell, just emotion, I am not connecting with you whatsoever. And it's going to be a chore for me to try to get some really, really good images. Let's see if I'm doing a photo shoot with this person. It's going to be a challenge. So I always found that I worked better with creative-minded people when it came to the photography side of things. Nothing against someone who's maybe super business-minded or very numbers-oriented. I don't think that way. And I was always have to talk to people, especially as I started getting more established, about, so you want this type of shoot. They'll look through my portfolio and say, I like that one, that one, that one, that one. You want me to put all that together for you? Okay, so tell me more about yourself. What is your artistic background? What kind of interest do you have? What kind of professional things do you do? And that'll tell me pretty quick, just from talking to them about what they do or don't have in their background. Hey, this is probably not, we're probably not going to be the best mesh. You're probably need to find a different photographer. and vice versa. Sometimes I need to find a different model, and I don't really do so much of that so much. I got one muse that I still work with, but everybody else, yeah, it's interesting. And I did music with my duo for what, 3 years or so, and it was just two different singers and one singer, and I got along with both of them. But boy, the second one, she was so random, and I loved it. And for her age, she's like in the mid-20s. She could start telling me about some 80s song. Like, how do you know this song? I grew up during that time, but she would rattle off like the smallest little weird detail that happened on the recording of that album. And I'm like, this is awesome. I love it. So when we would play live, sometimes she would do the hand claps where they're supposed to be, where most people would never notice that in the song because they're not in the forefront. They're in the background, way in the background in the mix. But she knew they were there because those are so important. And I would just start laughing on stage because I'm like, this is so cool that you know these parts that I dig and get off on. And I think that's why we work so well. I'm still friends with her to this day. We haven't done music in a long time, but definitely someone that I consider a friend and someone I care about. It's huge when you find those connections with those people. And Adrian, you said something a while ago, and I have to definitely mention this. There's a reason why I brought you to this. I loved our interview. I loved the interview that we did. I was so fascinated by it, and same with Michelle. And for me, doing these fun table sessions, I really try to find people that it's not about that you're both film people, or someone could have been, I don't know, an author, it could have been some other kind of artistic thing, but the personalities and the things that were spoken about during the interviews, that's what clicked with me. Is like, if I can get Adrian, if I can get Michelle, there's actually one other person. When you were talking about opera early on, I'm like, that was the third person that I was trying to get whose schedule wouldn't work tonight. I was like, oh, but it would have been perfect, because I'm just thinking, if I get these puzzle pieces of these people, I think it would work. So no, I thought it was wonderful with what you had to say during our interview. And I'm loving what you're both saying tonight. So that's why I've been just like, go, please. So I don't find it, and I don't think anyone watching this, because we still have people watching this too, I don't think it's anything that's not, it's incredibly interesting what you're saying, and you have a lot to say. So hopefully you don't feel anxiety or other things, with future actual one-on-one interviews that you do, because you are a great interview subject. Both of you are. So please know that.
Thank you.
I agree with Mark, Adrian. I watched part of your interview before Mark interviewed me.
I did watch yours. I did do something right. I did watch yours.
No, but I feel like, yeah, you're a great interview subject. I agree with Mark. Here.
I agree. Your interview is, but what's interesting is that, compliments aside, what's funny is that it's like when it's just with you and you and Mark, it's like but when you bring, for me at least, when you bring someone else, it's like, and just talk, it's a whole other, I don't know if you've done these, Michelle, where you've maybe spoken to other people, like group chats like this, or like Actors Roundtable or what have you, but it's like, this is really interesting to be able to speak with others and just kind of, I don't know, explore and converse in this way, because it's new to me, to not in this context, obviously. And I find that really interesting to just kind of like meet someone. And because for me, it takes time. Like I like just one-on-one, for whatever reason, I feel a little bit more comfortable. I'm like, okay, it always just takes time. So this has been I've been singing a lot tonight, but a real growing experience. And it's been a lot of fun, that's for sure. So
that is really fun, yeah.
Yeah.
Adrian, can I ask you something about Steel Song?
Go for it.
How did you find out about this world of, what is it called? Armored fighting? Is that the technical? I don't remember what the actual term is.
They call it armored combat.
Yeah. How did you find out it exists?
Yeah, so I wanted to do a documentary about hobbies. Yeah, and it just kind of went in that direction. And I mentioned this to Mark, but I feel like hobbies obviously say so much about the individual, and it says a lot about people. Like, why do you do a specific hobby? Whether it be escapism, what have you. And so I started going everywhere, looking at all the different kinds of hobbies. And I love period pieces. I love medieval epics and that kind of fantasy, Lord of the Rings, a total dork, so it's like totally
My name is Moo Baggins. Go on.
By the way, did you see the still of the new Amazon series that's coming out?
I'm so excited.
It looks like a painting. They released this still. I was just like, yeah. So
Oh yeah,
I'm
very excited.
I guess YouTube knows this about, YouTube knows everything and was like, oh, well, he's going to like this. And so it just shot me this thing of Armored Combat. It was like Vice News, a short documentary. And so I watched it, and then there's all these men, but then there's this one woman who took off her helmet, and that immediately clicked. I was like, this is such a interesting and profound angle, some of the things that she was saying, and I just really wanted to explore. And I knew it was a challenge because being a male director, making a film about women it's like, how do you approach that? So yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but I wanted to explore it, and hopefully I was able to, even now I would have been a different film if I was to make it now, but I hope that I was able to do them justice, and that I was respectful in my approach to their stories, being a male director. But yeah, that's ultimately how I discovered Steel Song and
cool.
this world, which is, yeah.
It's so cool. Also, like everything that, like, outside of just them fighting, like the armorer, the guy who was making the helmet, and like them like making their like sigils and things, and like their with the things they wear under the armor. I was like, this is amazing.
It's totally, yeah, it's unbelievable. That's the thing that was so interesting with hobbies, is that how not everyone, but many people have hobbies. And I find it so interesting how people escape into them, but ultimately people are people. And I think the biggest, and so this to Mark in the other interview, but I think the biggest thing is just the undertone of mental health. And especially now in this society where we're so quick to judge about everything. And I'm not going to some segue, some big, deep thing here, but just, again, I really wanted to touch upon that, because I know in part why I wanted to do hobbies, because a lot of people are judged for the things they do for pleasure. And to me, in my opinion, it's like, as long as you're not hurting anyone deliberately, belittling anyone, whether it be race, gender, and what have you, then why are we to judge if it's eccentric or strange or whatever to release? And everyone has their own way of releasing. And as long as it's in a healthy pursuit of something that can be, I don't know, there's like yarn bombing. I find that's awesome. It's like these old women in LA, they, graffiti artists. I wanted to do this as a documentary. There's a group of old women in LA who are fascinated with this thing called yarn bombing. So it's instead of graffiti, they do it with yarn. And
yes, I've seen that.
Right? Isn't it amazing? And so, I saw this one little mini doc about it. It was awesome. These old ladies are like, "Oh my gosh, we gotta get going!" And these like kind of like they started running. I'm like, "This is unbelievable," but again, but it's just so cute. It's amazing. It's like, wow,
great.
It's bizarre, but it's like, but again, what makes it bizarre? So anyways.
Right, yeah.
So that was my whole idea behind hobbies. And I guess that's always the case with any film or any story. It's just the human aspect, because that's what we relate to most. So, that's in part why, going back to 2001 Space Odyssey, it's like, Dave, it's like that, it's like, not Dave, but what's his name? The killer robot. Yeah, but it's like, it's human. It's like he turns it to something, which is so cool. When he's dying, you hear his voice. Huh?
Wait, what did you say, Mark?
Hal,
thank you. Yes. Thank you. When he's dying, it's like his voice changes from one that's very human, and Kubrick was very specific about that. You start hearing that it becomes artificial. It changes. And at that point, audiences disconnect from him. But as long as he's sounding human, we're involved. We almost don't want him to die. It's unbelievable how much we and which brings other conversations about many things. But yeah. Relatability.
Adrian, do you have any hobbies? What are your hobbies?
Good question. No. You know what's funny? I don't.
Really?
I know. I've been trying to find because I need to escape. I dance tango. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, I love tango. It's beautiful.
How long have you done that?
Oh, I'm a total beginner. So I've been learning. I just started right before COVID hit, and so I'm just starting back up because the schools are opening back up. So they've been trying to figure out like, well, how do you do this with so with COVID? So, but that, I guess in a way it's my hobby. But
cool.
I've yet to really find, how can I say, I love tango. I love the people. I've really met basically family because of tango. There's really, my teachers are incredible. They've really helped me a lot. They talk, and there's something about tango that's incredibly healing because I think it's so internal. It's so, I feel like other forms of dance, I'm not belittling them, I'm not judging them, going back to what I said earlier, I just don't connect to them. There's something about, say, like salsa or swing or something. There's something that's more fun, and for someone who's stuck up like me, I think I need something that's a little more and so you really have to face yourself in tango because it's hard, it's slow, it's incredibly technical, and you really have to delve in deep and explore a lot about yourself, which I think why the connection of the dance is so strong, because you grow in dancing tango, you grow as a person. Like I literally face, like I can get really, I'll get anxiety, I'll get impatient, I'll get whatever, but these are things that happens with everything in my life, who I am as a person outside of tango. So tango has helped me a lot, but I feel like I need another, I don't know, I need something to just, I don't know. The hammer dulcimer, it's a beautiful instrument. I've been debating learning that. I really,
that would be cool.
I love it. I think it's, because I tried the cello, and
I love cello too.
It's gorgeous, but I guess I'm too much of a wuss. I think after dance, I'm like, any form of bodily pain, I'm out. It's like the fingers against the chords. It's awesome, but eventually, I mean, I know people they don't feel it anymore. But I'm like, I think just holding on to these little drums and just going to town like that. And you're sitting down, you're comfortable. You're not hurting yourself, and it sounds really beautiful. So how about you?
That's cool.
Enough about me. How about you?
I do a lot of really weird little hobbies. I make I've been like dabbling with stop motion animation videos.
Yeah.
I like really meticulous work, and so I've been playing around with that, and then I also I studied singing for a very long time, and so I write songs, and then I will make little stop motion animation videos to the songs that I write.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I have like a lot of musical endeavors that I guess are also hobbies. I've started taking piano lessons again, which is super fun. And then just reading. I love reading. Read a lot.
I'm like that guy who I think like 90% of the population feels this way. It's like we want to be avid readers, and I want to read, and it's like I'll start and then my brain will just trail off to some other thing. So I'm watching a lot of lectures and YouTube videos, educating myself in that sense if I want to, or go delve into story, like audiobooks.
Yeah, my husband loves audiobooks. I can't do audiobooks.
I'm such a dork. I literally would go on YouTube and find like campfire sound effect, and like we'll put a campfire sound and then put like an audiobook on top of it.
Oh, that's cool.
It's the best. It's so cozy.
That's a great idea.
October lovers, it's great. And yeah, so I need to get into reading. I really respect, like, my girlfriend puts me to shame. She'll just start talking about all these things. I'm just sitting there going like, I can put on an act for like 2 seconds, and then she'll just completely surpass me, and I'll just be like, and then I start asking like really broad questions, just act like I kind of know what I'm talking about, or just repeat what she just said.
Or you're like, put on the campfire sound, and you're like, tell me another
exactly. In your brain. Yeah. I need to read. I
have a problem. Like, go ahead.
No, please. I keep cutting you off. Go for it.
No, I love reading like before I go to sleep, but then I'll get so engrossed in the book that I don't go to sleep. So I just read. I think I was reading until like, I don't know, we went to sleep kind of early-ish, like 10 or 11 yesterday, 10:30, 11. And I just read until like 2:30. I was like, I can't stop reading.
Do you want to see possibly, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful? Would it be considered a short film? It's 40 minutes long. I guess a short film is 30. So
Like,
I don't know. It's like
in
this.
between.
It was done for the television, and it's, I think, it's a gem that barely anyone knows about. And I discovered this years ago, and I watch it all the time. It's called The Song of Lunch. It's
Song of
based
Lunch.
on,
Write
it's
it
with
down.
Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson.
Oh,
It's insane.
The
And
Song of Lunch.
it's a poem by Christopher Reed, and
Oh,
it is beyond in every aspect, from acting to directing to editing to the music. The words are it's if ever you want to feel like inspired, for me, watch that. It is haunting, it's beautiful, it's
oh,
yeah, if you like reading it, the play, how the writer, the poet played with words, the amount, it's yeah. And I just saw Amazon has it. I think they literally put it up. I just saw it the other day,
Oh,
which
great.
is the thing about it. So I think you don't even have to buy it. You can just watch it.
Oh, I will.
Check it out. It's unbelievable. It's really inspiring. So I hope you enjoy it.
Cool.
Doing a
I'm
plug
excited.
for the Song of Lunch. Do you ever have pieces like that you kind of hold close to your chest, and when you like tell people, you almost feel like, oh, I'm giving it. It's really inspiring. You almost feel like it's mine, but I'm like, no, I should share. You know, it's interesting. There's certain things that I feel very protective about, like even though it's not at all mine in any way, but you feel like, I don't know if you ever feel that
Special
way.
to you, so it's a part of you now.
Exactly, yeah. You feel vulnerable sharing it almost. It's weird. It's like this. When it's ever happened to you. That's how I felt with that for whatever reason. I was kind of like,
I feel like there must be things like that, but I can't think of a thing at the moment. But I'm excited.
Watch it when we hang up.
Yep.
Well, I wrote that down as well, so I can check it out later. But I have to say, Adrian and Michelle, we're past our time limit, so that gives you an idea of how good this was. That it naturally just went 2 hours. And that's a real, honestly, I've done 27, 28 of these fun table sessions. That gives you an idea. Sometimes they kind of die out on their own, or things aren't quite clicking, but clearly this one was. So I love that. That's
great.
I'm so happy that you two now know each other.
Yeah.
And we had such a great conversation for me to listen into and participate at times. And if I didn't have all this shit sitting here for me to still work on, I probably would have let it keep going. But yeah, I'm trying not to let it go. Sometimes these things are going 4 hours plus. And so I'm trying to be a little more respectful of people's time. So, and in this weird case, I'm actually the one that I have to be respectful of my time.
Oh my gosh, you have a lot to do though. Moving? Oof.
Yeah, but Michelle and Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. About people that are watching this that are a little shy that didn't come into the chat, thank you for watching. And if you're watching it down the road, thank you as well. Happy Halloween, everyone, on Sunday. And make sure you give Steel Song and Implanted a look when you have a moment. And anything else that was mentioned here, you can check out, because I definitely have been writing all kinds of stuff down that I want to either remember or definitely look into once I'm back online. So until then, stay safe for everyone, and thank you so much for spending part of your Friday night with all of us. All right, thank you.
Bye.